Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D Shift podcast. And I am really excited to have somebody that I met through kind of a fluky deal where we both know Jack Perez, Cool Life. We're both part of her group, contributing authors to or contributing writers to her blogs. And I was in a group with this woman who just captivated literally my thoughts on what it meant to be a woman of a certain age at this time in life. So I would like to introduce you to this true thought leader, Dr. Andrea Slominski, and she is an author, a speaker, and a woman's midlife coach. And you just have some fascinating ideas. So Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you to tell people a little bit about yourself and your area of expertise.
Hi, Marty. Good morning. Good morning, ladies. Thanks for having me. It was really great to meet you through Jack, and we've met a lot of really dynamic women of age, because that's what Jack's whole thing is about. And it's they always say that when you go back to school, as an adult, or when you work on a PhD specifically, they say, oh, what you end up writing about yourself, and I thought, oh, sure. And I was like, oh, I guess that was true.
Wait a second.
I know, wait a second, that was true, because I ended up going back to school at 55 to get my master's. I had been teaching college for 9 years, and the recession hit and blah, blah, lots of different things happened. But I decided to go back to school to get my master's and PhD. And so while I was there studying archetypal psychology and mythology and world cultures and religions and all kinds of great things, I was going through the midlife shift myself, and I just discovered some amazing things. And that sort of led me on the path to where I am today, which, as a midlife women's coach and perimenopause and menopause, and that's how kind of we came together. But yeah, it's an amazing time of life for women. And I think the thing that really struck me when I was first researching this time of life for women and the transitions and the changes that we go through was that since 1900, women's lifespans, women of color, their lifespan has doubled or more than doubled, and white women's lifespan has increased by like a third. In 1900, women of color statistically were dead by 43 and white women by 51. And so in 100 and 120 years, we've increased our lifespan and created an entirely new life stage. Because if you think about being dead by 51, certainly there were always old grandmothers, there were ancient wise women. I mean, even since the time of Plato, right, who wrote about menopause. Menopause has been known and understood, but it really was kind of a harbinger of the end of a woman's life, right?
Sure, yeah.
The end of our life cycle. And it isn't anymore. It's really now a rite of passage into an entirely new life stage from 50 to 80.
Yeah.
Right? Or 50 to 70, 75, whatever. And so as I studied this more and more, and I looked at the sociological implications and the psychological implications and what this meant for women, I just got more and more excited. And I'm not the first person to study this or talk about it. I mean, I know Jane Fonda did an amazing TED Talk on it a number of years ago, but really it's just starting to catch on now. And women are really beginning to understand that this is something new. Mm-hmm. And looking at it in the terms of women's history, boomers and all of the women coming up behind us, right? We're late boomers, are the first generations of women in the history of humanity to live past menopause as a cohort, as a group.
Right.
So we're living into this new stage of life, which I say is from about 45 to 70, and I call it regency, because it's a time of life where we really get to claim sovereignty over our lives, where we get to make decisions about who we are, what we're going to do, how we want to recreate ourselves at a time when, if we had family and children, generally that part of our life is coming to a close. We may be coming to the end of one career, thinking about another. It's a time when we're going through 3 huge transformations. It's not just perimenopause and menopause. There's a pre-programmed psychological shift in midlife that if you're at all conscious and aware, you will realize that you're going through. And then the two of those together create a spiritual shift and a spiritual change in our perception of ourselves and our lives, what has meaning, that kind of a thing. And so it was just, to me, I was like, this is incredible. No wonder women are kind of sometimes at a loss for what to do, because there's no maps, there's no models.
Right.
It's brand new. We're creating it. We're recreating ourselves as women in this life stage. And oh my gosh, there's right now in the US alone, there's over 78 million women over 45. Okay.
Wow.
By 2030, there'll be over 87 million. So imagine what 87 million women could accomplish if we work together.
Yeah.
We have over 85 to 90, actually over 90% of discretionary spending in the US economy is done by women over 45. That's everything from choosing houses to carpets to cars to vacations to groceries to clothing to whatever, discretionary spending, right? The political power, the cultural power. We see now that even Madison Avenue, advertising is starting to shift a little bit. Film, entertainment is starting to shift a little bit because women are saying, hey, we're a huge demographic and we're not being served. And so there's a big shift. There's a big shift coming.
Yeah.
And we're powerful economically, we're powerful culturally, we're powerful politically. Mm-hmm. And I think we have the opportunity to really make a big positive shift in what's going on. And I'm just really excited. As you know, I've talked to you a couple of times about the possibility for women. And, I know that you help women through a huge transition in their lives, and that you counsel them in ways to go through it in the most positive and to get the best outcome for themselves and their lives. And I would just say to anyone going through that this is just an incredible opportunity,
Yeah. And this is what captivated me. Well, your passion about the topic and your knowledge on the topic is phenomenal. But the other thing that really struck me is that statistic you gave at the very beginning of your discussion just now, that 120 years ago, most women didn't live to 50. Mm-hmm. Now, and menopause was kind of like the death knell, right? Because that's 50, right? For most women. So now, we're talking about 70s and 80s. I've got clients that are divorcing in their 70s that are kind of like, okay, I've had it. I've got plans. I've got my own bucket list that my partner doesn't want to do anymore. So guess what? I'm doing it on my own, because you're right. I've got the money. I've got a career still. I've got opportunities. And it's not like in the bad old days where you couldn't have a credit card, you couldn't make a purchase, you couldn't own, you couldn't own your own, you couldn't take out a loan. That's what I'm trying to get out. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's all gone now. So what do you see? Why do you think that people, women of color, white women, why are we not banding together? Why are we still doing this, I don't know, weird infighting and strangeness? Or is that just human nature?
That's a loaded question. We could talk for a couple days about that. Yeah, it's a big one. I think that I think part of it is that the media, I think, gives voice to and amplifies the parts of culture that scream the loudest, right? So I think that where, yes, of course, all women have differences, right? And all women are individuals, and we want everyone to be able to live their most authentic life and to have a good life. Not all women have all of the advantages that we're talking about in terms of, income and career and all these sorts of things.
Very true.
So we have to, keep that in mind as well, that there are women who are still, working 3 jobs and struggling to make ends meet. and that all women are still working and maturing and becoming their most authentic selves under the umbrella of a patriarchal culture, which we're not going to get into smash the patriarchy. But the fact is that this is a patriarchal culture, and that the world of work, the world of commerce, the world of business, the world outside the home for over 3,000 years has been patriarchal, has been run and oriented towards men. So I think coming out of the women's rights movement and the 60s, 70s, and 80s, women were really trying to fit into business culture. We're really trying to fit into, to climb the corporate ladder, to say, me too, we can do this too. And I think a lot of women are realizing now, hey, we have a different skill set.
Yeah.
We are different managers, and sometimes better. I mean, there were reports by Forbes, by Kinsey and Company, by a number of different Harvard Business School that came out that said that women managers during the COVID pandemic were more effective and found to be more supportive throughout the corporate basic world, the corporate universe, than men during this time, because they brought different skills. And so I think that when women first went into the workplace, and when women first went into the political world and into the outside of the home cultural world, it was into a very competitive paradigm, and I think that women felt that they were not only competing against men, but they were competing against each other.
Sure.
For these things, and so for these positions or whatever it was they were doing. And so it's my hope that as we move forward into this new life stage, as women realize that, oh my gosh, some of the most successful entrepreneurs over 40 are women, though we still only get less than 2% of the venture capital for starting businesses, right? But that as we go forward, we'll see that it's in our own best interest to support each other, right? Yeah. To hire women when we can, to use women-owned firms when we can, to support other women in whatever their choice is, whether it's to stay home, whether it's to go out of the house, whether, when you hit Regency, you decide, well, I really just want to stay home and make cookies and take care of my grandkids, or whether you say, oh, hey, it's my turn. I'm going to leave this corporate gig and I'm going to take all my skills and I'm going to create a new company, or I'm going to get a divorce and start a new life. We're pioneers in a brand new territory. And when you think of the pioneers, crossing the whole American mythos, crossing the plains and expanding the nation, they didn't make it by competing with each other. Right? They created a new paradigm, and they created this new experience and this expansion by supporting each other, and they wouldn't have been able to survive without doing that. So, I think a lot of differences do exist in the way women look at politics, in the way women look at culture, and I think it's important that we foster respectful conversations, right? Yeah. In that realm, so that we can understand each other better. Yeah. Because even if we have different political ideas, we still do have, as women in this world, in this life stage of a certain age, certain things in common, and certain battles that we're going to fight together against ageism, against misogyny, against sexism in the workplace, against the glass ceiling, against all different kinds of things.
Right.
And, you and I both know that our culture, likes to dismiss and overlook, aging women.
Yeah.
And so we have a whole paradigm that we have to shift. And it has to start with the way we look at ourselves and the way we interact with each other, right? I mean, that's what I think. Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good point to take off with here. What is that paradigm shift, and what are your suggestions for us 40, 50, 60 plus year olds that are sensing this kind of evolution of this new stage? Like you said, we're creating the blueprint. So we really, I think, have a obligation to try to get it right. We're not going to get it perfect, but to do our best to get it right. So what are some of your thoughts on that? Because I know that you are a real thought leader in this area. So what's your perspective or your ideas or?
Well, I think each woman, since we're talking about women, we'll just do that. I'm not trying to exclude men, but we're talking about women.
Right.
So each woman, I believe, has her own gifts to offer, right? And her own skill set and her own wisdom and her own life experience. And it's my hope and my belief as a mythologist and an archetypal psychology aficionado, I would say, that each woman would strive in this life stage to really find out what is your authentic gift. What is it that you have to bring to the collective, and then bring it? Because we need people to be authentic and to be working within this new life stage to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of problems to solve. And this is, I'm going to get a little mythological on you here, but that's okay. I really think it's very interesting, going back to the idea of the year of 1900, the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century, that this was the time of this was when suffrage began, women's suffrage, right?
Right.
Beginning of the push for the vote. This was the beginning of psychology. This was the beginning of the whole idea of coming into psychology with Freud, with Jung, with all of those that followed after them, with understanding. Oh my gosh, it was the real speed up of technology. There was so much happened in that century, and during that time, we have suffrage, which then, of course, leads to women's vote, which then, of course, we get into the sort of 40s, 50s, 60s. We get into the women's rights movement. And so we have a resurgence of what I would call the energies of the archetypal feminine, which is the rise of women out of the home and back into influencing culture. Mm-hmm. Into going out of the home into the world, right? Trying to become a more active part of society. And so with the rise of this feminine archetypal energy, we also had the rise of the psychology, of the goddess movement, of the environmental movement, of all different kinds of new ways of thinking that came out of that period of time, right? And so here we are at almost 2023, and we're facing a lot of different problems: cultural problems, sociological problems, environmental problems, world problems. And women are graduating into an entirely new life stage, where they have all their wisdom, their life experience, their work experience, at a time when the world needs solutions more than ever. Mm-hmm. So we have the rise of the feminine, the rise of the wise woman, if you want to, right, regency into the wise woman, the rise of this at a time when we've never been in so much peril. Let's just look at climate change, right?
Yeah.
Of being able to destroy the planet we live on and most of the species, right? So I don't think it's a coincidence that this has this time, this new life stage, where women can really bring to the fore all of their abilities to solve problems and to work in culture at a time when we are really on the brink of huge problems.
Yeah.